Chodesh Rabbi. I was in Israel last week. Somebody asked me a good question over there about Besamim. I'll explain to you. He said something like this. He says, there's a rule like this when you go, by the trees. And the trees have Besamim on them. There are some trees like this, they have Besamim. Like for instance, there's a lavender tree. Or there's a farsemon tree, They have good smell, these trees. So he says, right? Yeah, okay, usually when, what we do is that we bless on this, Borei atzeh besamim. If you smell the tree, you say Borei atzeh besamim. This is what you bless. You enjoy the smell of it. But what about if you don't know what the reason why this tree was planted? Maybe it wasn't planted to smell. Maybe it was planted for shade, so people can sit under the shade from the sun. Or maybe it was planted because of noise, because of beauty. So maybe that doesn't allow you to bless the besamim. Why? Because it wasn't planted to smell it. This was his question. Interesting. So I said to him, right away, my instant answer was like, it doesn't really matter why they planted it. But I said, I'm not really 100% sure. Let me go and check. I opened the books. So I went that night. I opened some books, and now the books are on the computer. You don't really open the books. You just open the computer. It's all there. Everything is over there. All the books are there. So I looked into it, So what do I see? Interesting, right? It says in the Shulchan Aruch about this, about Besamim. Two halachot, and two interesting halachot. One is that, let's say, you have Besamim, and it wasn't made to smell, this Besamim. It was made for a different purpose. So what purpose could it be, right? For instance, this happens all the time. We have it also in our time. You go to the bathroom, right? And there's some fragrances over there, to keep away the bad smell from the bathroom, air freshener, right? Whatever they call that, right? This is also besamim. Do we bless on this besamim? So Shulchan Aruch says no. Why? What's the reason why? Even if you're outside the bathroom, obviously inside the bathroom you cannot make a bracha. I'm talking when you're outside the bathroom. So the answer is because it's not made to smell, that one. So what is it made for? It's made to take away the bad smell, to take away the sirachon. Right? So it says Shulchan Aruch, things like this we don't bless on it. Another example is, for instance, you have, lo aleinu, right? You have a met, dead body, corpse, right? So you know what happens, right? Once the person dies, the bad smell starts to come on his body. It starts to stink, the body. Shem Yirachem. So what happens is, that when they take the person, to bury him, the corpse, they put some besamim there, around his coffin. What's the purpose of that? To keep away the bad smell of the met. You understand? To drive away the bad smell, so people shouldn't smell it. It's disgusting. So what do we bless on that? Same thing, right? We don't. Why? Because it's not made for smelling. It's made to drive away the bad smell. This is the reason why. Shulchan Aruch says like this. So anything like that, similar to that, we don't bless on it. This is the rule, So now the question is, what about the tree? Right? Because the tree, as we said, right? What about if it wasn't planted for besamim? It was planted for a different purpose. Maybe that's the same thing. We shouldn't bless on it. So the truth is, it's not true. There's something different here. This is not the same as the halakha we just said right now. I'll explain to you why. Because there's another halakha in the Shulchan Aruch. It says like this, that let's say you're passing by a town, right? But you didn't go inside the town. You're just passing outside the town, right? But you know what it is? You smell over there a nice besamim there in the town. You smell it. So the question is, should you make a bracha? You don't see the besamim, you just smell the besamim. So says Shulchan Aruch, if most of the people over there in that town are Jewish people, you should bless. If most of the people over there are goyim, you should not bless. What difference does it make? Goyim, Jewish? What difference does it make? Because in the old days, right, when the goyim had besamim, usually it was for what? For avodah zarah. Understand? Their besamim usually was in those days for avodah zarah only. So you're not allowed to make a blessing on besamim, which is for avodah zarah, asur lehana. You're not allowed to get benefit from it. So you're not allowed to bless on that. So that's why the Shulchan Aruch says, if most of the people over there are goyim, so we assume that it's for avodah zarah. You cannot bless. But if most of the people over there in the town are Jews, so then we assume, right, it's not for Avodah Zarah, so we do bless. But here's the question now, right? The question is, wait a second, but according to what you just told me, right, remember our question? Our question was, what about if the tree was not planted, for Besamim? It was planted for a different purpose. Maybe that tree also in that city was planted for a different purpose. So how does the Shulchan Aruch allow me to bless on it? I don't know what the purpose was. So therefore you see from there, right, that we don't care really why it was planted. We don't care about that. We're not concerned about that. As long as it was planted, it grew, it has Besamim there, we do bless on that. But it wasn't planted for Besamim. So you know why that is? Because when the Shulchan Aruch says, right, that you're not allowed to bless on something, Besamim, which is not for smelling, that's talking about you didn't make it for that purpose. But here it was planted. Making something and planting something is two different things, not the same thing. This is the reason why, you understand? So when you make it for something which is not for smelling, it's like the examples we brought, there you don't make a bracha. But when you plant it, for something which is not for Besamim, doesn't matter. Planting and making is not the same thing. So you learn from there, right? The halakha is that if a person, does smell any tree, right, that has there Besamim there, grows Besamim, you should make a bracha on it. Borei atzeh Besamim, you should. In here in New York, I don't really find many trees like this. But in Israel, there's many like that, There's many beautiful trees over there with beautiful smell. It's like, you pass by there, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? You pass by there, you feel like Tchiyat HaMetim, you just woke up, It's like, the trees are so beautiful there, That's the way it is. So, that's the rule, Rabbi. Something else interesting I'll tell you about this, which is something similar to that. Which is that, what about if a person, right, they wanted to make the Besamim, as we said, right, for the dead person, and for the bathroom, we said, right, we don't bless on that. But what about if they made it, but they didn't use it yet, for this purpose? Are you allowed to bless on it? This is the question, right? They made it, but they didn't put it in the bathroom yet, or they didn't put it next to the mat yet. Are you allowed to bless it now or now? So the answer is yes, and I'll explain to you why. Because there's a machloket in the Gemara, right? Hazmanah miltahi, hazmanah la miltahi. What does that mean? Does preparing something make it into what it is already, or you have to actually use it? What makes it into what it is? Preparing it or using it? So Gemara says hazmanah la miltahi. That's halakha. So what does that mean? Preparing it is not enough. You actually have to actively use it for that purpose. So therefore, in this case, right, as we said, if you made it but you didn't use it yet, you can still bless on it because hazmanah la miltahi. Just preparing it is not enough. It has to be actually used for that purpose. Then it becomes asur. What do you say?
On perfume, you can say bracha?
This is the amazing question he's asking. So the truth is, that there is a machloket about perfume, and I'll explain to you why this is. It's good that you asked this question. Let me explain it a little bit. There is a halakha in the Shulchan Aruch like this, right? Which has to do with your question. For instance, right, let's say a person has some oil. Let's say he has, olive oil, right? Corn oil, vegetable oil, whatever oil that he may have, right? So, usually corn oil, right, vegetable oil doesn't have a good smell. Sometimes olive oil does have a good smell. There is sometimes. But usually like a regular oil, that you use for cooking, it doesn't have a good smell. So there's nothing to bless over there. But it says like this, right? What about if you put there inside some isbe besamim, some plants in there, which have besamim, like nana, right? Menta, right? Something like this, right? Let's say you put it in there and it absorbed, right? The smell, the oil, right? So now you're supposed to bless on that. What do you bless on an oil like this? Whatever you put in there, that's what you bless, right? If you put nana, bore isbe besamim, because it's not from the tree; it comes from the ground, right? So whatever you put in there, the blessing becomes according to like that. But it says the Shulchan Aruch like this. Listen now, right? It says the Shulchan Aruch. But if you now take that oil, right, which has the besamim inside, and you filter it out, you take a filter, right, and you pour it into the filter, mesanen, right? So now you remove all the besamim inside. So now should you bless on this oil? So says Shulchan Aruch, no, don't bless on it anymore. If you filtered it, don't bless on it. What difference does it make? Because now the ikar is not there, the makor is not there anymore. Understand? The source is not there. So what do we see from there, right? What's the reason? What difference does that make, by the way, if the source is not there? There is still smell there, but the smell is not strong so much, It's not so strong anymore because the source is not there. So it says Shulchan Aruch, don't bless on that. So interesting thing is, that what about our perfume that we have, like you asked, right? It doesn't have inside there, the herbs, the actual herbs in there, right? It's just liquid. So you would think, right, according to what we just said, that you should not bless on that, because there's no ikar, there's no source there. It's just the smell, the liquid. What do you say about that?
In the past, Kohanim used to be Keturah.
Yeah.
And tradition says it had a very strong smell.
Of course, yeah.
But I never heard that they were giving me blessing.
That's an interesting thing. I have to look into that, by the way. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that. If they blessed on that, they didn't bless. But the Chora, you do have to bless on that, on the incense. You have to make a bracha. There's a Gemara like this, right? It says that the smell of the incense was so strong. Listen to this. It says, right, that even people, where was this in the Bet HaMikdash, right? In the incense, right? They used to smell it even Jericho, which is a few miles away. The smell would come over there, So they used to bless also over there on the. So you see from there, right, that Lichora, you do have to bless on that, on the incense. Okay, that's a different question. I got to look into it a little bit more. I need some research, a little bit this thing. But anyway, right, one step at a time. I can't give you everything in one shot. But this question, right, I already have the idea here. Very interesting, right? So as we said, that in the perfume that we have today, it's just liquid, right? So there's no makor lichora there. But Maran, Rabbi, he says that you should bless on the perfume. You should. Even though there are some poskim who disagree with him. Like Rabbi Elyashiv. Rabbi Elyashiv says don't bless on it. Because the makor is not there. Maran says no, you should. Why? Lichora, he's against the Shulchan Aruch, what he's saying. Huh? What do you say about that? Right? So I have an answer to answer for Maran. To defend his kavod. You know what the answer is? The answer is that, yes, our perfumes, they don't have, you can't see the makor in there, from right the grass, whatever it may be, right? You don't see the makor. But the makor is still there. You understand? What does that mean? What they do today, they have technology today they didn't have in the old days. In the old days, they would just either have the besamim in there or take it out, one or the other. Today, you can liquefy, that besamim and make it into a liquid. And you can't see it anymore. You take you put it into a blender, right? Or, something like that, right? You puree it, and it becomes a part of the liquid already. So that's the thing, today, the perfumes that we have today, the makor is in there. It's just that we don't see it. It's already liquefied. You understand? It's not the same thing. So therefore, I would say that if you want to do like Maran, to bless on the perfume, you have what to rely on. ברוך ה' לעולם, אמן ואמן. רבי חיים כשאומר אצל הקדוש ברוך הוא זכות ישראל, לפיכך קיבלנו להם תורה ומצוות, שנאמר בני חפץ, למען צדקו יגדיל תורה בידי.